Hello everyone, welcome to Super Coaching UPSC by Textbook. This is Venkatesh, your faculty for geography. So students, recently scientists have studied about a glacier called as Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica, and considering its consequences on climate change across the world, the sea level rise across the world, they have named it as Doomsday Glacier. It is not just in the recent era they have named it. It is just the impact of the Thwaites Glacier on the sea level rise across the world. They have recently studied further and have concluded that the amount of ice which this glacier has lost from Antarctica and how it can has a potential sea level rise contributing almost up to 4% of the sea level rise across the world, and increase in the height by around 2 feet, 2 feet of sea level rise by one glacier in the Antarctica. They have named it as Doomsday Glacier. Let us understand how this Doomsday Glacier or the Thwaites Glacier is important. What is the technical concept behind it? What do they observe? And how UPSC can frame questions out of this. Let us understand all these things. So if you see the location of the Thwaites Glacier, we have the we have the Antarctica region, the region of Antarctica. So this is the region of the West Antarctica, West, this is the East. So on the Western Antarctica, there are two major glaciers. One is the Thwaites Glacier, along with, this is the Thwaites, along with another glacier called as Pine Island Glacier, very nearby it. They are significantly known for vulnerability with respect to the increasing impact of climate change on it. So let us understand what is this. So if you see the location, the Doomsday Glacier or the Thwaites Glacier is located in the West Antarctica region of a minor sea called as Amundsen Sea. Amundsen Sea. Okay, this minor sea also name can be very important considering its significance, right? Then you see that it is vital to the entire stability of the West Antarctic ice sheet. So there is a huge, humongous ice sheet of the entire region of the West Antarctica, and this forms the base, and this is vital. So any further negative impact on the Thwaites Glacier can lead to entire glacier being breaking down into ice and increasing the level of the sea water. That will lead to coastal flooding. So why does it so? Understand its dimensions. If you see the dimensions, its coastal edge stretches around 120 to 160 kilometers of edges. It's a huge area. It is a 40 meters above the surface of the ocean and 200 meters depth. And also, it almost covers an area of 1,92,000 square kilometers, roughly equal to the area of UK, United Kingdom, or the state of Florida in USA. So such a huge area of ice mass is very, very vulnerable to climate change, is what we are discussing. Okay, that is the Doomsday Glacier. Okay, so if you see it further, the impact here is why it is happening in this way. So we need to understand that the topography of Antarctica. If you see the topography of Antarctica, this is the map. You can see the height is more on the eastern side rather than on the western side. So if you see the height here, the height is very less. So what happens when you have the height being very less and the height is very high here is, you need to understand that, okay, so imagine this is the coast of Antarctica, okay, and then, or rather imagine this is the area of the Antarctica, this is the ocean, and if you see that the sea level is very less here, when compared with here, the sea level is quite lower side. So what happens is, Because of the lesser sea level, this water mixes more with the surrounding areas. So the water can encroach into the landmass. You can see here, the water here can easily encroach into the landmass. As you can see, the water encroaching, and because it encroaches, there is more warm water which is mixing with the ice and which is making it warmer further. And because of this, there is a concept in glaciers which we need to understand, called as glacier's grounding line. You can see what is a grounding line. Grounding line refers to the ice. The grounding line is the line between the underlying bedrock and the ice where water slowly enters into it. You can see here, this is the grounding line, and this grounding line you see here, slowly this is shrinking and going more into the deeper portions of the Antarctica. The water enters into the ice. As the water enters into the ice, the grounding line is moving more into the deeper portions of the Antarctica, going more into the deeper portions, and because of this, the grounding line goes more southern, more deeper, more into the land. And because of this changing nature of the grounding line, we call this concept as what? Retreat of the glaciers. Retreat. Glacial retreat. So the glaciers are retreating back, or in other words, they're converting into ice. This phenomena is happening more because of its dimensions, the huge area. See, it is almost like a 6-story building seeing in front of you collapsing. Such is the huge height of the Thwaites Glacier and the nearby glacier called as Pine Island Glacier. You need to remember both. Though the major glacier which is about to called as Doomsday is only Thwaites. Thwaites, along with Pine Island, forms the base of the West Antarctica. So forming the base of the West Antarctica, they can entirely, this grounding line concept, which is the line between the ice as well as the bedrock. So what is the grounding line? The line where the ice is meeting the bedrock and where water is entering into the ice. And slowly as water enters, what happens is, as the grounding line goes deeper into the glacier, goes into the landmass, this entire ice will slowly start floating on the land. What is the consequences of grounding line variations? Because of the variations of the grounding line, the ice shelf which is nearer to the ocean, it will start breaking down. As it starts breaking down, it will turn into water. As it turns water, the sea level will be eventually be rising. If you see that entire Antarctica, you see here, in the Antarctica glacier, because of the latitude and all, there will be more amount of snow. That snow will be dumped onto the inner parts of the Antarctica, and it slowly spreads outwards by a glacier. It is a glacier which will drag the entire ice from the inner portions of the Antarctica into the ocean. So in this process, what is happening? The happening is there is more water which is being released into the ocean. So this is the concept where they ask you, what do you mean by glacier grounding line? So that is an important concept you need to remember. So why and which side of the ocean there is more amount of Antarctical coastline loss? It is on the western side rather than on the eastern side, right? Then moving further, you can also see it that there are two island glaciers, the two glaciers of the Antarctic Ocean, Pine Island Glacier, Thwaites Glacier, where together are responsible for this. Thwaites continues to retreat around the same rate of 1 kilometer a year and loses a mammothing impact of 37 gigatons of ice annually. So researchers believe Pine Island Glacier's grounding line retreats by around 1 kilometer per, how much? 1 kilometer per year in the 2 decades before 2011. So the Pine Island Glacier grounding line has retreated by how much? Around 1 kilometer per year in the 2 decades before 2011. Now this is the thing. Though it has seemed slowed down recently, So the grounding line is going deeper into the landmass of the Antarctica. In other words, ice is converting more into water. That is the reason why it is leading to consequences. And there were studies conducted by International Panel on Climate Change. IPCC have studied that if this is the floodplain of a coastal area and this is the city, and you can see that if there is a projection of a certain amount of a floodplain, the 2050 projected high tide, because of the continuous sea level rise, will be entering onto this point. You can see the sea level is only here and 2050 would be here. And if the same, and if the same thing continues, you can see that sea level will be flooding coastal areas. So which are the areas are very, very vulnerable to sea level rise? If you see the vulnerability of the sea level rise, we need to say, remember the names, the areas which are very, very vulnerable. So one such area which is very important, Bangladesh, Netherlands, which are very, very, in fact, these can be the ambassadors of climate change. Netherlands, the regions of New York, Florida, islands of the Pacific Ocean, They are the most vulnerable things because when there is more ice on the sea, when the ice converts into the water, there would be a sea level rise because of Thwaites Glacier. Presently, the sea level rise of the entire world is attributed to 4% by Thwaites Glacier alone. 4% of the sea level rise, and if the same projections rise, it can rise up to around 2 meters height. The entire rise in the height of mean sea level, the consequences would be this. Because of this, there would be a negative impact. So that is the concept you need to understand, right? So what you need to remember about this concept as such is, so if you see it, the main concept you need to remember is Thwaites Glacier is called as Doomsday Glacier. Why? Why something we call it as Doomsday Glacier? Because of its impact on sea level rise and consequences of climate change. In fact, this idea of Thwaites Glacier melting is attributed an event of El Nino, which has started their impact in 1940s and still it is continuing. And you need to remember a concept called, what do you mean by grounding line of glacier? Or what do you mean by retreat of glaciers? Okay, Thwaites Glacier is called Doomsday Glacier. Another one, and Pine Glacier, Pine Island Glacier, together on the west coast of the Antarctica. So how does this grounding line of the glacier, the bedrock, is the thing which will indicate about the impending climate change? That you need to remember. And also what you need to remember about is the consequences, and this is the entire era of which one? This is the cryosphere. Now you see, have you ever heard about this kind of loop? The cryosphere, the loop. So what happens? Albedo loop in the cryosphere areas. Now what happens? There is melting of glaciers. Because of melting of glaciers, there is more ice. Because of more ice, now the albedo level will decrease. albedo level, ice will be melting, albedo level will increase, and the albedo level will increase will lead to further melting of glaciers. We all know that ice reflects the sunlight. 90% of the fresh snow, 90% of the sunlight which we receive, if there is fresh snow on the ground, the entire 90% out of the 100% would be reflected back. So there is no heat which is we are trapping. So when there is ice melting, when there is more water instead of it, albedo level will increase. Because of the increase in albedo level, once again it further leading to the melting loop. This is what we call it as the Arctic loop or the Antarctic loop of climate change. So once you are part of this climate change, you can have an impact. Not just that, when the sea level rise happens, what happens is it will disturb the ocean currents, it will disturb the movement of marine life, which can together can have an impact on climate on land. Climate and land. These are the negative consequences of something called as cryosphere. So cryosphere, the ice sphere. When you have the ice sphere melting, especially in the regions of Antarctica, Arctic region and all, it can have a disastrous consequences across the world. So that is about the sea level rise. I hope you all are following this. Any particular doubts you have? Have you got a fair idea about what do you mean by the sea level rise, how it is having an impact and all? Any particular change which you need to understand about this? What kind of questions they can ask? So this is one question. Discuss about the changes in the cryosphere areas, ice caps and the consequences. This is one. And the other one is about this concept put together, which they can ask as part of the preparation, right? I hope you all have understood this. Until we meet next time, it's goodbye. If you want the PDF file of this topic, you can get into my Telegram channel, and any doubts which you have, whatever it is associated with UPSC preparation, you can always interact with me in my Telegram channel, right? So until we meet next time, it's a goodbye. Thank you all of you. We'll see you again with a new topic in the upcoming days. Thank you.